Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Fastball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School over in Jackson, New Jersey, 935 Venice Mills Road. We'll send a little message of some stuff going on with the church a little bit later on today. A couple different things we're going to get into today. I'm going to talk a little baseball later on, a couple different things that I'm seeing as we're following spring training, and they kind of bother me. And I'm going to give you a little hint. We're going to talk a little bit about velocity, but not in a way that is, adored by the fan today. And I think a lot of things going on in baseball that we're kind of, as fans, having attention drawn to. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. But we tend to say, all right, it's sexy per se to look at how fast somebody throws a ball or how hard and far somebody hits a baseball. But I want to talk a little bit about the NCAA and college basketball. I'll throw the number out there if you're interested, you want to be part of the show. The number is 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. A lot of attention has been drawn to the NCAA, and in particular, the sport of basketball. Not so much the other sports. We could talk about money as far as it's being given to players illegally, whether it's coming from agents, from boosters, from supporters of the school. But this is something that is applying absolutely, probably about 98% to the sport of college basketball as opposed to other sports. Yes, have players that have played football received money or received improper payments as they pertain to the sport? Sure. But right now we're talking about the biggest issue which exists in college sports, and it pertains just about 100% to basketball. Now, a lot has been said about whether players should receive money, whether they should receive something in addition to the scholarship that they're getting to play college basketball. I'm okay with some of it. I don't have an issue with the thought of paying a player to play college basketball. The issue that I have is the rights that have been taken away from players that may not necessarily want to play college basketball to begin with. Not only that, but they may not in any sort of way want to go to college whatsoever. The NBA and the NCAA, working in conjunction with each other, have told any player that wants to play basketball professionally, wants to play in the NBA, that there will be no more Kevin Garnett's. There will be no more LeBron James's. They've set as a rule in stone that every player that is going to high school and wants to progress and potentially play in the NBA at some time has to go to college. Now, that idea by itself doesn't seem like it's that bad. But you're telling somebody that could potentially just want to play basketball professionally, may have no interest in college whatsoever, that they must, and I repeat, must, go to college for at least 1 year. So you don't think that that's contributing to the issues that we're having in regards to players that are maybe feeling like they deserve a little bit more than your average and ordinary player? They may feel that their value is worth a little more to play for a certain school, whether it's Kentucky, whether it is Arizona, whether it's any one of these big-time college basketball programs that are having issues, right? And they can't keep themselves away from breaking rules when it comes to getting the players that they want. We understand that there's a business that exists in the world of all college sports. When players are looking to take that next step and feel, and they're actually being told right now, that there's no other option. You must, when you're done playing basketball in college, when you're done playing basketball in high school, the next step is to go play at the college level. And you must play for at least 1 year before you could be eligible for the NBA draft. The biggest issue that I have is when you're dealing in some cases with kids that may have no interest in going to college whatsoever. And you know what? We can't look down upon somebody that has decided they don't want to go to college. I understand the status of where we're at right now. Most, and I would say a higher percentage of kids that go to high school end up going to college now than ever before. But it doesn't mean that every high school graduate goes to college. Now, you could get into a bunch of different fields or learn a bunch of different trades that don't require you to go to college whatsoever. And up to a certain point, up until, LeBron James and the last of the other high school players went right from high school to the NBA, you had an option to not go to college or not play college basketball. You could go directly to the pros. So isn't there a little bit of a hypocrisy involved here? Because now the NCAA and the NBA is forcing every one of its high school players to enroll in a college basketball program. And it doesn't have to be a top program. You've seen some examples of kids that have ended up going to the NBA and in some cases having success by not going to a big time, college. But now you're forcing them to enroll in a school where they know they may just hang around for the minimum time. What's the percentage of these athletes that are being forced to enroll in college for 1 year that know after that 1 year they are going to forego the remaining years that they have in college and go right to the NBA? Obviously, in the end, and I don't mean to bounce around to a couple different topics, obviously the talent is going to prove whether or not they can do that. If they're not talented enough, they just simply will not last. They will not get to the NBA. They may not get drafted at all. They may have a long, winding road to hang on to play basketball because they simply may just not have the talent. But I'm assuming that this athlete that we're talking about right now has the ability to play in the NBA. They may know it. They may be a McDonald's All-American. They may be a guy traveling all around all different parts of the country. And the thought is, this is going to be the next big-time phenom. This is going to be the next NBA star. So once they graduate high school, they are now forced, without any choice, to enroll in a college program. Obviously, getting a scholarship, probably full paid. Just about every single example of this type of player will get 100% of their college tuition paid for. But what is the percentage of these athletes that have no interest in college whatsoever? Some of them may come from a tougher background. They may grow up poor. They may grow up in a poor family with very few opportunities to put food on their table, let alone, live any sort of a respectable life. So they look at the gift that they've been given, and this is to play basketball, and they're seeing it get delayed. Now, the outside of it, the other part, the negative view that you may have to put against this person is given a free education. But it only applies to those that actually want the gift that is being given to them. The fact that they were blessed with the ability to play basketball at a high level doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to accept this gift that's being thrown their way, saying, because you can play basketball really well, we're going to make sure that your college is paid for. What does one have to do with the other? And I hate to come down on this like this, but sometimes it needs to be explained in as simple terms that is explained. What does playing basketball at a high level have to do with a completely paid for college education? You may want to say that person that forgoes that opportunity is foolish. You may want to say that person that, is given a full college scholarship, a chance to, learn as much different things as they can and, hone a skill down that they could use it for the rest of their life. That person that doesn't want that opportunity may be foolish or maybe making a foolish decision. But what does the ability to play basketball at a high level have to do with a college education? And you may ask, why am I saying this right now? Because the other side is what you're seeing going on in the NCAA right now. And the FBI that's probing the NCAA and how certain players are being paid certain monies, whether it's by boosters, whether it's by agents, whether it's by people that are associated with schools, just so they have the opportunity to sign the player and they don't go to a different school. Maybe it's a rival school. Maybe it's a school that's competing with them for supremacy amongst the top colleges in all of America. They may be competing for that championship just as much as they are. From the school's perspective, they want to get the top recruits. They want to get the top players that are coming out of high school. They want to build themselves up for a championship. All of this has nothing to do with education. Yet, you want to throw it at the player as if they're getting this gift, which it obviously is. The majority of people that are not athletic, the majority of the people that will never get a dime to go towards any athleticism that they have, would appreciate every single cent that's contributed to a college scholarship. But what about the person that is not interested in the academic side of things? They may look up to a LeBron James. They may have, studied every single one of his moves. They may have looked at tape from LeBron James when he was 6 years old and studied it in accordance with every year as they were growing up. Got every single one of his moves, got the jump shot that he's got, the ability to drive to the hoop that he's got, the ability to play defense that he's got, the stamina that he has. May have worked with some of the greats that can help him own his skills as a basketball player. And once he's done graduating high school, he may be ready to play in the NBA. But because of the hypocrisy that exists in college sports, the agreement between the NCAA and the NBA, kids are not allowed to jump right from high school to the NBA anymore. So now, whether it's the FBI getting involved, whatever, the NCAA has the nerve to come down on these same kids, which, by the way, they're forcing to go to college when some of them don't even want to go to college. And you're going to dare come down on them for any money that they may be receiving. First of all, the people to blame are not the kids, especially when we're dealing with kids that come up from bad backgrounds in poverty level. And if you're going to offer them $1, they're going to take it because they don't know what $1 is. They have not seen it in their entire lifetime as they were being brought up. In some cases with no fathers. In some cases with no parental guidance whatsoever. And you're going to dare tell these kids that they're the ones that did something wrong here? You got boosters that are contributing hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of dollars to this school, to these schools. And they're looking to buy these players. They're willing to contribute their own money to buy these players. But you're gonna come down on the player that's willing to take the money when they haven't received $10 in their entire life. The free money that's given to them, all of a sudden they're going to be treated like they're the criminal. The criminals are the boosters. The criminals are the agents. But the biggest criminal act that exists is what has been done to these kids. How come we can't have, in this country, some sort of competitive developmental basketball league that is below that of the NBA? In other words, you look at Lonzo Ball's kid, the one that got busted at UCLA for stealing. He's out there playing professional basketball in Lithuania. He may not be ready for the NBA, but at least he's doing what he wants to do, and that's play basketball. And you know what? I can't fault him for that. He's doing what he believes is best for him. He wants to play in the NBA. He's expecting at some point to be good enough to play in the NBA, so he's working on that. He's not taking some bullshit class for photography or something else that has nothing to do with anything that he wants to do just because he's getting a college basketball scholarship. But nobody wants to seem to talk about it that way. It's all about who is there to blame. Do you blame the kids for taking money when they haven't received a dime in their lifetime? They've lived in a one-room apartment with 4 siblings and a single mother who's working 3 jobs just to try to make ends meet. And they've been playing basketball since they were 5, 6 years old. Have continued to work on their craft every single day. And you know what? They're starting to show fruits of it because they're dominating in high school. They're getting attention from colleges, but they're getting attention from the pros. They have accomplished enough where, you know what? Maybe they can compete on the NBA level. But the NCAA has said, we're going to force this person, regardless of whether they want to or not, to go to college. What if the athlete does not want to go to college? And you know what? We can talk about from the outside how that may be a bad decision. And maybe 9 out of 10 times that may be a bad decision. But you're taking away the choice from the athlete. You're taking away the choice from the young man. You're telling him that he cannot play professional basketball out of high school. What if he was doing 2 things in his high school life? What if he was playing basketball and working a full-time job to help support his family? What if he may have the knowledge, he may have the IQ, he may have the ability to handle himself as an adult, excuse me, to live a life outside of high school, but may not have been able to focus on his studies. And the fact that he may not be 100% college ready is not a sign of a lack of IQ. It's not a sign of the inability to handle college classes. What if there were other things going on in this young man's life that have kept him from putting a priority on his education? If he wasn't able to do well in high school because he had to work a full-time job to help support his family, and since he was a kid, all he thought about was how good he was going to get himself at playing basketball, so when the time came he could play in the NBA and repay his mother for all the hard work that she did raising a family of 4 kids with no father. You're going to force that kid to go to college when he may not be ready for college. In fact, he may be more ready to play in the NBA than he is ready to take a college class. And all I have to say is the nerve of you, anybody who feels like the person is throwing away an opportunity to go to college. We don't study these on case-by-case basis anymore. We don't. We look at it from our own tunnel vision that we have when we're looking at something. It's either our way or the highway. When you're valuing a college education, the same thing has to apply to every single person and every single individual. And it all has to be the same way. We don't study the certain percentage of high school athletes that may not necessarily have no interest in going to college. It may just not be feasible for them. So you're going to tell me a high school graduate that spent his entire high school life supporting his family, that it doesn't matter that they may not necessarily be ready to go to college. And you know what? There's plenty of cases of people that graduate high school and may not be ready for college right away. They may let a semester or a year or a couple of years go by before they pursue their college education. We don't look down upon them. We don't put that proverbial gun to their head and say that you must start college that next semester right after you graduate high school. As we hit the halfway point here on the Fastball Show. Once again, John Pielli with you. Number is 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. Anything that's on your mind in regards to baseball, sports, and unifying America. We're going to talk a little baseball in a little bit, but I want to finish this topic talking about the NCAA, and it's almost like a power trip that they have over kids because, first of all, they've taken away their rights to make a decision over whether they want to go to college in the first place. And like I said, I'm looking at this. Obviously, some other sports may have some similar implications, but none are impacted in a way that college basketball is impacted. We see that by the scandals. We see that by the fact that the FBI is doing a probe. We're looking at all these great and sometimes all-time college basketball head coaches that have players that are tainted because of money they've received. And you can make a case that not every single college basketball coach is involved in this stuff. It could be by a booster. It could be by an agent. It could be just a bad apple. In some case, it could be an athlete that has decided to make a bad decision that makes the college that they end up going to look bad. But you're going to take away the rights of a high school graduate to make a choice over whether or not they want to go to college. As long as it pertains to basketball, though. Remember, think about how many people across this country decide that, all right, they graduated high school, they want to take a semester off. They want to take a year off. Maybe they want to wait a little time to see if college is something that they really want to do. And maybe down the road, they decide to go to college. Maybe 2 years later, end up getting their degree and end up living a great life. But if you are a college basketball potential player, if you're a high school player that's playing basketball, dominating, you graduate, You have no choice. Your next step must be, according to the NCAA, to play college basketball. You may have no interest in going to college whatsoever, but according to the NCAA, you must play college basketball. But then the other side of it is you're going to be penalized if you decide to take money. Now, here's the last point I'm going to make about this. You have many cases where athletes have received money, and we talk about the illegal, sending of money to players when they're not supposed to receive this money. That LeBron James type of player that was going to skip college altogether to go into the NBA draft was probably interested in hiring an agent as soon as they graduated high school. So now you're going to talk about how it's not right or it's not fair that this person either decides to hire an agent or decides to receive money in some sort of professional manner. The NCAA is screwed up on so many levels here. And they've turned a blind eye in many cases when players have received money, and they've been receiving money from boosters for years. We're talking about 40, 50, 60 years. How many, there's alumni have existed forever. Prestigious alumni at big-time schools that have been successful in their own rights. And they've decided to, spread their wealth by supporting the school that they graduated. You don't think they're throwing money so their schools can get the best kids? And they don't even care about whether they're the best kids. They want the best athletes to support their programs so their programs have the best chances to win. It's ridiculous. Once again, the number is 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. Moving on, I wanted to talk about something else that, is kind of, I guess I can't come up with a better word to say than annoying. We can talk about the Mets, who played a game today, and obviously their star pitcher, Noah Syndergaard, took them out. And what is the discussion through the 2 innings that he's pitching? Wow, he's popping that fastball in. 100 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. Which, by the way, if you're talking about a sideshow and you want to see something that really has nothing to do with the action or the baseball team, we can talk about how hard a pitcher is throwing a baseball. And I'm sure we could talk about anybody that's had a long career, successful in the major leagues. And I'm sure it wasn't about how hard they were popping that fastball. So the media is all over it because they know it's going to get the most attentions. When you talk about Twitter, what's going to get the most retweets? Somebody throwing a ball 100 miles an hour. Well, there's a couple issues with throwing a ball 100 miles an hour. Does it flow with the amount of ease? Is it a maximum effort to throw the ball that hard every single time? I think that's a little more important than lighting up the radar gun on game 1 of spring training. Especially when we're talking about a pitcher that essentially threw his arm out last year. He tore his lat muscle, which I'm not a doctor, but I would assume the main reason why that happened was he was overexerting, the amount of velocity that he was looking on every single pitch. And I got nothing against Noah Syndergaard. Listen, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a Mets fan. I'd like to see the guy perform at the highest level. I'd like him to win the Cy Young this year. But from a guy that was coming off of a pretty serious injury when he tore his lat muscle last year, I just hope he has his priorities straight. Because his priorities should be, I'm still being out there at the end of September into October to perhaps save enough gas to be able to last through a full season. Because for the first time in his professional career, there's a little bit of doubt that's been cast towards it. You're looking at a guy that missed a good 4 months last year for potentially overexerting himself throwing a baseball. And I'm not saying he should, tone it down considerably. Listen, he's a strong dude. Baseball players and arms and bodies are built to handle much more than they ever could have before. But the most unnatural motion that one could put upon himself is taking a baseball and throwing it as hard as you can repeatedly. Some may be able to do it better than others. Some may be able to do it at the highest stage consistently. But it's still an unnatural motion. It's still undue stress that's put on an elbow, a shoulder, and everything in between. So while fans and people in the media, and like I said, I consider myself somewhere in between. I can't stand a lot of the perception of the media, so I certainly don't want to be part of that. But the emphasis is on velocity. Noah Syndergaard probably got more attention today because he was throwing 100 miles an hour repeatedly than anything that was put on him for tearing his lat muscle and missing 4 months of last season. Obviously, the pitcher doesn't want to get hurt. We know that injuries happen in baseball and all sports. Some can be prevented. Some maybe can't be prevented. But the media, once again, is throwing the attention on the wrong thing. Sure, they're going to ask him the rhetorical questions afterwards. Hey, Noah, how did your arm feel? Noah's going to give some rhetorical answer to it. It feels fine, dude, whatever. But the emphasis should be over his next couple starts. Over maybe, if he can, to tone down the amount of emphasis he's putting on throwing each pitch. And maybe he has a plan. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. If he goes out there and he does the equivalent of 2018 to winning 20 games, which we know that's not win 20 games, to pitch perhaps 180 to 200 innings, make 32, 33 starts, perhaps get over 200 strikeouts, have a whip under 1, use the advanced stats out there, the high FIP, ERA plus, high WAR when it comes to pitchers. Have all those things going for you. The question that I would ask him, is he in the best position to do that? Or does he only know one way? Has he only been taught one way? Is that to exert himself 100% on every pitch? And you know what? If I was asking Noah Syndergaard a question after today's outing, that would be what I would ask him. Are you putting 100% emphasis in every single one of your pitches? Are you airing it out every single time that you pitch a baseball? Because he could learn something from a guy that just won the World Series this past year. A guy who has won a Cy Young before. A guy who's won an MVP before. A guy that's managed to win, 25 games in a season? And that's Justin Verlander. What stands out about Justin Verlander, what makes him great on the mound, is the fact that he doesn't exert himself for every single pitch. He's a guy that can start the game by throwing effectively 93, 94 miles an hour, sometimes even a little bit less. But he focuses on location. He focuses on mixing his pitches up, He focuses on changing speeds. And when the 7th, 8th inning comes, you'll find that Justin Verlander is throwing the ball 97, 98 miles an hour. But how many pitchers are trying to duplicate what Justin Verlander has done? Not that many. Because the emphasis is on what the media is preaching. And I believe scouts and people that are studying analytics are emphasizing a little more than they should. It's on how hard you throw the baseball. Can you hit 100? Can you hit 98 consistently? We're teaching pitchers to throw now as opposed to pitch. And you know what? Anybody that's pitched in the major leagues understands the difference. When you're airing it out on every single pitch, you're not necessarily focused on location. When you're airing it out every single pitch, you're not necessarily focusing on command or having control over where the ball is going. And I know the emphasis when somebody is just focusing on throwing, it's about the same release point and repeating the mechanics. And you can repeat the same mechanics and have relatively good control when you're just throwing. But it's kind of coming to a, I'm trying to make the right example here. It's like, you're a carpenter, you're showing up at the job site, and you have a toolbox, but you're only choosing to use one of your tools. And use the hammer as an example. There may be things that you need a screwdriver for. There may be things that you need a chisel for. But you continue to use the hammer for every single thing. First of all, the hammer is going to wear down. Second of all, you have a ton of good, useful tools in that toolbox that you're choosing not to use. And I understand. We look at the great Mariano Rivera, who pretty much dominated the game of baseball by throwing one pitch. But he threw one pitch well. He threw one pitch to both sides of the plate. He changed speeds off of that one pitch. He didn't take a ball and throw it as hard as he can for 20 years. And I bet you Mariano Rivera would say that if he did that, he would not have lasted as long as he did in the major leagues. So looking at it from a way that I guess we would call perspective, why would somebody emphasize on just throwing the ball as hard as they can for as long as they can? Especially when you ask your average pitcher now, and they're gonna talk about wanting to last as long as they can in a game. Caden S. Wanger says, I play catcher for my baseball team. That's pretty cool. We're talking about the emphasis that somebody is putting in regards to throwing a baseball as hard as they can for as long as they can, and it does impact how long they can last in a game. When we're studying these numbers of how pitchers last the third time through the batting order, they got a batter that has come up twice already, and the guy could be throwing 105 miles an hour. They could still be throwing 105 miles an hour, but the third time they're facing them, the batter is able to time what 105 miles an hour feels like. And obviously you could say that at any level. You could say that at 95. You could say that at 100. You could say that at 92. But the bottom line is that the pitcher is coming out attacking a batter with the same pitch. I don't care if he's Sid Finch and throwing the ball with a boot on his foot, 140-something miles an hour, which we know is just about impossible to do with a baseball. As time goes by and as a batter feels through each one of his at-bats what that mile per hour and velocity of a fastball feels like. They could time it. And even if it's a matter of 1-2 swing, they could time a pitch that's coming no matter how hard it's being thrown. And I'm wondering out there in the world of pitching coaches, as they apply to high school, college, we could talk about, travel teams. What's the emphasis on a pitcher developing themselves and be able to attack a lineup more than 2 times now? We could talk about the continuous weightlifting and everything that's involved to get somebody in a position where they can throw a ball harder. I remember, from, the small example that I had playing baseball in high school. Yeah, you watched as others would weight train, and you'd see them get a little more pickup on their fastball, a little more buzz to it. If they were throwing something close to 80, maybe they were able to increase the velocity a little bit from year to year. But you try to figure out what is the difference between somebody that is learning how to get themselves through a lineup multiple times. But now, once again, we talk about the emphasis that's being put on velocity. And like I said, I wish Noah Syndergaard the best. I hope he dominates this year. But I tell you, every time I watch him throw the ball 100 miles an hour time after time after time, and the oohs and the ahs that are coming from the people in the crowd and on Twitter, I start to wonder, when is he going to throw a ball that's going to cause some damage to his elbow, to his shoulder, or anywhere in between? Because it is perfectly unnatural for somebody to throw a ball that hard repeatedly. And my last question I want to ask, how come more pitchers aren't training themselves to harness the velocity that they have in their pitches? And maybe not stress to throw the ball 95, 98, 100 miles an hour in the first inning 10 times to maybe save some of that gas. I understand we could talk about the first game of spring training. And listen, anybody that knows baseball and knows spring training and the progression that a pitcher goes through knows that probably game number 1, Noah Syndergaard's just airing it out because he knows he's only going to pitch 2 innings. I get that. But the question is, how is he going to deal with start 3 and start 4 when he starts to build himself to go out there and pitch 5, 6 innings? When I'm down there in spring training in the last week or the 3rd week of March, is he still going to be looking to light up the radar gun in inning number 1? And I think part of the reason why Justin Verlander, and I know he had a little bit of arm trouble a couple of years ago, but the reason that he didn't pretty much flake out was part of the way that he works, part of the way that he does not put the emphasis on throwing the fastball as hard as he can in the first inning. And I would make a bet out of all the pitchers in baseball right now, he probably has the best ability to last another 5 years or another more than 5 years. But I look at it, and I hate to use it in a negative way, but I'm going to use Stephen Strasburg as an example. He's another guy, max effort, it seems as if on just about every pitch, lighten up the radar gun. Obviously, similar to Noah Syndergaard, has some great other stuff, has a great slider, has a great breaking ball. The movement on his pitches is outstanding. But I look at a Stephen Strasburg and I say 5 years from now, is he going to be able to, number one, maintain the same velocity that he has right now? And number two, is he able to develop more into a pitcher? Because we've talked about a lot of very good pitchers that have dominated a game for a pretty long time. But we're seeing their shelf lives being cut a little bit short. We're seeing pitchers that used to be able to make it 15 years, maybe 20 years in the big leagues, start to flake out after 8, 10, 12 years. And 12 years is a lot now. We've looked at a couple of them. One of them was up for the Hall of Fame for the first time this year, and that was Johan Santana. You could say part of the reason that he didn't have that longevity was certainly because of arm injuries, but could it have been the fact that he maxed himself out on a good amount of pitches? I know he's known for the changeup, but throwing the ball as hard as he did allowed for his changeup to deceive hitters the way that it did. Roy Halladay, God rest his soul, may have accomplished enough to be a Hall of Fame pitcher. And I see a lot of similarities between Halladay as I did between Pedro Martinez. I think Pedro Martinez was better. I'll give him that. But I think Halladay was in the mold of a Pedro Martinez because of his ability to pitch. He was a prime example of a guy that didn't overexert himself every time he threw the baseball. He changed speeds better than anybody. He was a throwback. And in fact, if you look at the amount of games he was able to complete in an era where baseball did not have or allow pitchers to complete 9 innings. It was an example of his game planning and the way that he went through a batting order different times. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. He was able to give a batting order a change of pace and to keep the hitter guessing when he came up there every single time. We may not see another Roy Halladay. Why do pitchers not want to emulate somebody like that? Why does somebody not want to emulate a Halladay? Why does somebody not want to emulate a Verlander? Maybe it's similar to what I'm talking about, in other sports. We talk about basketball, somebody to have a sick crossover and be able to get that video up on YouTube and 1 million people watch it. What would he do? Does that person have the ability to sustain themselves at the professional level in the NBA? Or they just got a couple moves? That guy that's throwing the ball 100 miles an hour, but in year 3 flakes out and is bagging groceries after making the minimum salary for 1 year in Major League Baseball. Are they still going to look at those YouTube videos of them flashing the ball 100 miles an hour? 1 million likes on Facebook. But they're talking to different insurance companies trying to figure out what kind of salesman they want to be for the rest of their lives. I think some of it goes into how we're teaching kids. And the fact that the over-technology that exists out there, that we're putting so much attention and emphasis on velocity. Not enough emphasis on how can the guy pitch. Anybody can hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball at the major league level, especially if they're seeing it enough. If you're going out there at one speed, throwing the ball that hard, a hitter's going to be able to time it. Maybe not right away, but I promise you at some point of the at-bat, they'll be able to get the barrel around fast enough. But once again, the media keeps feeding into it like it's the greatest thing. It's almost like we're trying to appeal for a group of 12 to 15-year-olds out there. They're all going to say, wow, he threw that ball hard. Did you see that ball pop when it hit the catcher's glove? If I'm a fan of Noah Syndergaard, I'm going to want to see that guy pitch in October. I'm going to care more about that pitcher making 32 starts and winning a Cy Young than I am going to over how fast they threw the ball in spring training. Couple show announcements. Be happy tomorrow to be joined by longtime MLB writer Tracy Rigglesby, who's working, I believe, for MLB.com now. And on Thursday, we'll be joined by longtime sports writer Jerry Eisenberg, who's been a sports writer for over 55 years with the Star Ledger and is one of two, and I repeat, two sports writers that have covered every single Super Bowl. And I want you to let that sink through your head for a second. 52 Super Bowls. Jerry Eisenberg is one of two sports writers to cover every single one. He'll be joining the program this Thursday. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.